burned me while I'm trying to. Ow, 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 ow.
Dude, 600 FPS. Oh my goodness.
We turned heat into cold. 16 Celsius. You could run that back into. It could power itself.
By the way, I'm not dead. Update video on this soon.
The other day, my eyes peeled open out of excitement. And I was like vibrating out of excitement. You know what I'm saying? And I said to myself, I could build a Windows computer, Windows 10 computer that runs on fire.
Okay, we gotta plug it in. We gotta plug it in quick. Oh my goodness. No way.
Sure, that'd be sick. Fire in the thumbnail, share it with your grandma.
Please share the video with your grandma or mom or cafeteria lady.
So the next day, and by that I mean like 3 weeks later, I got a bunch of these like cheap little thermoelectric generator things that straight up look like those little snack crackers we were force fed as a kid. Thermoelectric generator. Basically you get one side hot, one side cold, and it'll output a current.
Oh yeah. Check that out. That is so much more than a potato. Let me tell you, I'm so glad it's not a potato.
Plug it into the wall. Plug it into the wall.
Okay, 2 volts. Oh, more than an amp? What?
So I slapped 5 of them onto a water block and then connected that to a water hose, so stay nice and cold. Then I put heat sinks on the other side.
Thermal glue.
Then I got one of Olivia's cake pans and I cut a hole into it.
Oh yeah.
Do a bunch of insulation on there. Oh my goodness, I don't know if I can do this. Oh, bro. Feels like I just washed my hands 50 times and then like rubbed them on a chalkboard. Oh, it's over. Wait, I have to cut the center. Oh! Put it on a little smokeless fire pit.
We need the water hose to be connected to the thigh bone. It's a steady 5 volts with 2 amps. Freaking power the computer. We gotta plug it in. We gotta plug it in quick before everything destroys itself.
And boom.
I think. Oh. Okay, blink. Uh-oh, it's getting the wire. Oh no, not the connection. Not the connection. It's so close. It's so close.
But then it hit me though. This is stupid. There's an outlet behind me, like 5 feet away. Remember when I spent 3 months powering a PC with potato? Bad. Yeah, I can still smell it.
Just plug it into the wall, man.
But it got me thinking, you know, I can just turn heat into electricity.
That feeling when law of thermodynamics hits you?
Because like every time new PC parts come out, which is right now, everyone freaks out, including me.
Even as I'm editing this, Ryzen 7000 comes out and straight up hits max heat in like
8 seconds.
They're like, it's got so many gigafarts. It's 9,001 watts. This tech tuber, he'd be like, oh, it's basically a space heater at this point. I told you guys 6 months ago exactly how many gigafarts this thing would have. I'm going to tell you precisely how many megasharts per second this will get you. And then Linus be like, I'm about to drop this. Buy my underwear. This time around, dude, you got people talking about how like it's gonna use so many watts and generate so much heat that like the power grid can't keep up with like the AC and the PC parts, because the AC's got to run because you generate so much heat. Last time around, you had people's 3090s literally catching fire.
Turns out this was actually a 3D render, but they had us thinking it, man.
I think Russian Badger's PC like went up in flames. And then what do? They overclocked it. They're like a 3090 Ti, 12900, 12900K, 12900KS. More watts, more heat. Well, I now wield the power to turn heat into electricity. So what if the heat from your PC was useful?
That's what I set out to test. And for that, I'm gonna need a maximum gigafart PC. So luckily I had the privilege to visit the best place to buy computer parts.
What's up guys? Today we're headed to Micro Center.
And they agreed to sponsor this little endeavor and give me whatever parts I need.
This is my favorite aisle.
To my relief, the staff was once again incredibly helpful.
Ryzen 9. How many gigafarts does it have?
Gigafarts, at least 4.
See, this is 9 on the box. I was hoping for 9.
Even though you guys literally destroyed the store looking for the Shrek bill on aisle 6.
Look how much different it looks. In hindsight, it's my fault. What's it, pretty bad? So, oh my, I'm the one who shouldn't have done it. But still.
Okay, it's gone. This guy got it and the free PC. It's over.
Bogus Bobby on the back, dude.
So if you're not some nerd who's gonna ransack the store and you're a new customer, you can get $25 off a processor. Like I said, a lot of new stuff coming out, so right now is a great time to build. And if you don't want to build it yourself, use their online PC builder tool and have an expert technician assemble it for you. And listen, I visited a lot of their stores, talked to a bunch of the employees. I would indeed consider them actual experts.
Do they have any gigafarts?
Yeah, but not as much.
Okay, what's gigafarts?
Plus, they paid me to turn my toilet into a PC, so. All of that being said, these are the parts I chose to get the most powerful and hottest PC at the time of recording this video.
It's so pretty though. I don't want to catch it on fire.
It's gonna be getting hot, and I need it to be stable, so I went with an MSI Mag motherboard.
Now, I will install a CPU to a spinning motherboard. I did it.
For the CPU, I went with the 12900KS, which is absurd in a good way. For the RAM, I went with Team Group 5600 MHz DDR5 and a 1TB SSD, because everything else is on my network. RGB power supply that we're gonna stuff in the back, but we know it's there. The cooler is a 240... Great cooler, but a little too small for this build, and I'll show you why later. Guess how many fans? One.
Mr. Homeless, you're down in the bed. Why you only use one man? You got no heat.
That's what you sound like when you say something dumb.
And then just a big fat 3090 Ti. Yeah, you know, that's good stuff, man. And I put antivirus on it.
And then I need a set antivirus, but that's way over there. I'll go get it. I got a couple viruses. Yeah, it's pretty bad.
So without a doubt, this thing's gonna put off some heat. But the thing is, what's happening with these little TEGs is heat makes electrons bounce around. So if you heat one end of a conductor like a wire, it pushes electrons to the other side that is colder, which creates your voltage. So I just need to funnel all the heat from this PC to one side of these TEGs and then keep the other side cool.
Just need something that perfectly fits on this section here.
I imagine I could get some sort of insulated box-shaped object.
No way. It's like a glove. It's like it was meant for this. No meme. It fits like perfectly. Like I know it's cardboard, but this is a prototype.
So I'm thinking I use my one fan to pump all the heat from the PC straight onto these heat sinks. And these heat sinks will absorb the heat from the GPU, the CPU, everything, and then transfer all of that straight onto the one side of the TEG. And if they're inside this box, then the cardboard will act like an insulator. So the heat can't escape and get onto the side that's supposed to stay cold. And to keep that side cold, what I'm doing is essentially using the same cooling system that would otherwise be on the PC. A little pump and one more fan.
So that's the layout. Look at that. The thickness is like perfect. Slide on in there. Ooh, like a glove, baby.
I added one more big one up here for good measure, and then I spent a couple days just like cutting and drilling and cutting and drilling. Obviously, I cut a big hole in the side so you could see what's going on in there. If I was truly a YouTuber, I'd just put a battery in there and then fake it. It would have saved like 3 days of my life. I thermal pasted the water block on, and then I did a little bit of bolting and a little bit of sticking. Also just a little bit of bleeding. So where does the air go after it hits these heat sinks? Well, I have it set up to where it circulates back into the system. Now, this may sound dumb, but according to the laws of thermodynamics, we are turning heat into electricity. So the air that we're sending back into the PC is a lower temperature because the heat is being removed and turned into a current. So not only will we be producing a current from the heat, but since we're removing the heat, our AC has to run less, saving even more energy. If it works.
Now, I could fire up some synthetic benchmarks, or I could take it into some real life scenarios and live my life and use this 48-inch OLED LG Ultra Gear monitor and play like 4 instances of Minecraft with like Rocket League in the front.
LG claims that this is the best console gaming monitor.
Oh my goodness.
And I gotta say, I do agree.
Maximum gigafarts engaged. CPU temperature 33 degrees, and our GPU is sitting at a chilly 32 degrees. In theory,
And if you guys thought for 1 second that I forgot the RGB on my prototype generator invention, you're dumb.
the RGB will be powered from the system itself. The fan and pump will be powered from the system itself as though it's part of the system. Yeah.
I fired up a mini Minecraft and Rocket League.
48-inch OLED. Oh yeah, another Minecraft. Dude, 600 FPS. Oh, the CPU's hit 100.
And the heat started rolling in.
What voltage are we getting, if any? 0.6 volts is what it's showing right now.
Now the real test is how many volts it can produce at peak efficiency.
So as the heat transfers into the heat sinks, we should only increase in voltage up to 0.7 volts. Okay, we gotta keep gaming. This electricity is being generated 100% off the heat of this computer.
In order to increase the voltage, I wired 2 of the modules into a series instead of parallel.
Oh, we are past 1 volt. Let's increase the voltage once again by wiring yet another set of them into a series. Ow, ow, ow. Oh my goodness, we're up to 2 volts. This is what the wiring looks like now because I touched it. 2.1 volts at almost 300 milliamps and climbing. I'm gonna wire the last one into a series. And so they'll all be wired up into a series. We are now at 2.4 volts.
And it was still steadily climbing. You could use this current on the same technology
Basically like a little mini air conditioner.
to turn the electricity back into cold air.
The electrical current then goes into the TEC, and essentially what we've done, we've turned hot into cold. Ambient temperature of the room is 22 degrees Celsius. 16 Celsius.
You could save the energy by putting it into a battery, but what I think would be the most effective use of something like this would be putting it back into the power supply to increase the overall efficiency of your PC. Now, obviously the heat won't entirely power the PC, but it's definitely enough to save some money.
And so we peaked in high school, we peaked at like 2.7 volts.
And as it turns out, one of my modules was broken.
Or 50 millivolts or less. Yeah, it's just broken.
So we would be making like 25% more power if this one wasn't stinking broken. Yeah, and it's made out of cardboard.
So if I could do this with some crap off the internet and a cardboard box, I know it could be done much better.
Efficient modules that weren't trash and like $9 a piece.
If this were actually manufactured, it could be a viable product that not only generates some electricity,
You could probably create 70% more power than this one here. And then if you had a more efficient heat transfer,
but takes some heat off your air conditioner.
if you got 20 watts off the heat, you could run that back into itself.
Now, I will be submitting this build to the Build Showcase on Micro Center's website, and you can do the same and actually receive a coupon for it. So check out those links in the description. Thank you, Micro Center, for always sponsoring whatever it is I got going on, man.
Box of scratch, making a generator. Come on, I'm basically in a cave. Give it to me.
Teddy Stocks, baby.
Quick update on the Waldo situation. A lot of people have been asking. We are almost ready for clip submission. We're looking for help on the infrastructure team, someone to lead that team. There's information in the description. New video on it soon. Thank you. Goodbye.
Hi guys, welcome back to another video. You guys really seemed to like when I took you along for the journey of Flappy Bird, so let's do it again. This time I'm going to make a game called 2048 with just redstone. 2048 is a desktop and mobile game released in 2014. You have a 4x4 grid of squares which can hold tiles. The goal of the game is to create a 2048 tile by merging other smaller tiles together. The controls are up, down, left, or right, and when you do any of those, the tiles will be shifted in that direction. If any tiles hit each other that are the same while they're shifting, they merge into a tile that's twice as big. So naturally, all of your tiles will end up being some number 2 to the power of x, because they keep doubling every time. After every move, a new tile spawns in a random spot, and that tile is usually a 2, but it also has a 10% chance of being a 4. You can also just keep merging after 2048 if you want to. It's an arbitrary decision to stop there. My personal best is the 8192 tile, and it was on a school computer. Oh, I'm probably not supposed to say that. Let's start with the easiest part, the display. I'm gonna do a lamp display again. This seems like a decent size for a tile. Since we only have to show numbers, the type of display that comes to my mind is a 7-segment display, which uses 7 segments to display any number. You've probably seen these before on digital clocks. The smallest possible 7-segment display looks like this, only taking up a 3x5 area. If we use 4 of them behind a tile, this is how it's gonna look, and honestly, I think it looks pretty good. Actually, I just realized a problem with this display. I can't put every number in the middle, right? I can put 16 in the middle, and I can put 2048 in the middle, but 128, I have to either put it on these 3 digits or on these 3 digits. Yeah, I think we're gonna have to go with a completely customizable display instead, because that way we can put every number in the middle. Plus, I already know I'd get so many comments about it not being centered if it's not centered. Okay, here's my first idea for a programmable display. You just have 5 pistons, and each one starts an observer clock, which will only follow a specific chain and only light up 1 lamp at a time. Let's put this on the display. Okay, I put it on the display, and now we can write any number we want, and more importantly, we can put them all in the middle. But we need to be able to display lots of different numbers, not just 2048, so let's make a bunch of ROM lines that will store the numbers for us, and then we can switch to any number we want. Okay, I made a bunch of ROM lines, and now we can display any character we want, all the way from 2, 4, 8, all the way to 8192, because why not? So when we turn on 32, for example, this entire line gets depowered, and all the torches attached to it get powered. These torches are coded for the actual pixels of 32, and so when we look at the screen, it shows 32. Or for example, I can turn on 512 and we get 512. All right, awesome. We already have a tile that can display every number we need. Now it's time to start thinking about representation. We're going to be doing logic with these tiles. We're going to be moving them around, merging them. So how do we want to represent them in the hardware when we go to do that? Well, we only have 13 different numbers that we can display, and 13 is less than 15, so why not signal strength? We can just represent every tile on the board with one signal strength value. I mean, they might be a little bit harder to move around than binary, but I just have a feeling this will be easier. So let's make a little adapter on the back of the tile that converts a signal strength value to one of these values. Okay, I made a little adapter, so now if we put in a signal strength of, let's just say 3, we're going to get the third lamp down, which happens to be an 8. And that's an 8. So now we can do any signal strength 1 through 13 into there, and it'll show us all the numbers we need. In other words, we can now represent this tile with one signal strength value. It's right here. All right, easy part out of the way. Now let's talk about the game logic. Okay, I'm gonna be honest with you. I know how to play the game and I know how the rules work, but I don't really have any good intuition as to how to replicate the algorithm in Redstone. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna code it in Python. This is gonna give me a fundamental understanding of the algorithm, and hopefully it'll help spark some ideas about how to do it in Minecraft. You clicked on a Redstone video, surprise, coding. So I got it coded up right here, and we just got one class board, and we have a bunch of methods with it. We just use one instance of board, and we can play 2048. It's pretty cool. So I'm not going to bore you with the lower levels of the code, but I at least want to show you how it's working, because I think what this is doing is pretty easy to replicate with Redstone. Since all the moves are symmetrical, let's just talk about moving down for simplicity. When you move down, the code makes 3 function calls: compress, merge, compress. Compress just pushes everything down as if there was gravity. It doesn't combine any tiles, it literally just pushes stuff down as far as it can go. Merge then checks to see if there are any tiles that have the same number tile above them, and if so, merge them into the bottom one. Now, why do we call compress again? Well, it's because of a weird scenario that you might not think of, or an edge case. This edge case is where you have 2, 2, 4, 4 in a column. After the first compress, nothing happens because the column is full. Then after merge, the 2's merge into a 4, and the 4's merge into an 8. And you can probably see the problem, we have dead space. So that's why we need to call compress a second time to make sure that all the tiles are fully compressed after the merge. And that's it, that's how you move. Compress, merge, compress. The code just does that for every single direction, down, left, right, or up. It's all the same. So in Minecraft, if we can figure out a way to implement compress and implement merge, we're golden. That's all we need. Let's think about compress first. We need a way to compress these signal strength values towards a direction, kind of like gravity. And I've actually seen some videos of gravity circuits before, so I'm gonna do a quick search to see if I can find it. And oh my god, was that search worth it, because look what I just found. This is a signal strength gravity design by Samos the Sage. I'll link his channel and the video I found this from in the description. You can input whatever values you want here, and they'll line up against the side as if there was gravity. That is amazing. The value you input travels along this main path, which also stores it into memory cells along the way. However, after it passes by a memory cell that it just went into, it deletes it, meaning that once it gets to the very end, it can't go past it anymore, so it doesn't delete it, and it just stays there. In Samos' video, he calls it a first in, first out queue, because that's also a way to use it, but in our case, we're just going to use it for compressing. He's also got his own explanation on there, so if you're confused or want to learn more, I highly recommend checking his video out. Remember, Redstone and engineering in general is not always about doing everything from scratch. A lot of problems have already been solved for you. As long as you understand how it works on a fundamental level, and you're not cheating on a test or anything, there's no reason why you shouldn't use someone else's stuff, with credit of course. Sometimes it's a matter of using your resources rather than using your brain power. Anyways, this thing is absolutely incredible because it basically does compression automatically. We don't even have to think about it. So let's make this circuit do merging as well. Okay, I've been working on it for a little bit. I think I got manual merging working. So if we press this twice, we're gonna get 2 1s, and if we press this button, they should merge into a 2 on the right. Amazing. Just for good measure, if we do 2 of these, which I think are 4s, and then we press this button, they should merge into a 5 on the right. That is incredible. Dude, stuff never works first try like that. The next step is to get it working a little bit more automatically. We need the game to detect if any 2 signal strengths that are right next to each other are the same value, and if so, activate the button. Okay, I think I might have automatic merging working. Well, not completely automatic, because you still have to press this button over here, but the idea is once you press this button, that's just going to do all the merging you need to do. Alright, let's test it out. So if I put in, let's just do 3, 3, 4, 4. We want the 3s to merge into a 4. we want the 4s to merge into a 5, and then we want it to shift over to the right again. So we want to be left with a 4 here and a 5 here. Let's press the button. Let's go. 4, 5. That's exactly what we want. Now, we could have gotten lucky, so I'm going to put this through a bunch of stress tests, edge cases, stuff like that, and making sure it's 100% working. All right, we have compress, we have merge. They're actually both done in this circuit, which is really cool, but unfortunately, we're only a fourth of the way there, because this circuit only compresses and merges in one single direction. If this was our board right here, it would only go to the right. We need to make 3 more of these, one for down, one for left, and one for up, that all do the exact same thing. Doing it to the left is pretty easy. In fact, it's already done. I just flipped the circuit with World Edit, but going up and down is a lot harder. We're gonna have to make...
No.
Make new designs for those. Oh my god, I take back everything I just said. Look at what Oscar just said. Since 2048 is symmetrical, making it horizontal might be beneficial. That is... that is so smart. I mean, look at this. If we make the game flat instead of vertical, he's right. It's way easier. You just take whatever you have and you rotate it around this plane. I'm kind of embarrassed I didn't think of that. I mean, we're done. Now we have all 4 types of movement. The only bad thing about this is we're gonna have to redo the display to make it flat instead, but that is a worthy sacrifice. So let's make a tile display that's flat instead. To do that, I'm gonna use this mechanic right here, which was invented by Sloime. This is a pass-through circuit that allows you to send multiple patterns to the same display. To create a pattern, you simply replace the yellow blocks with upwards facing observers. For example, let's say I want to be able to display the first lamp and the 5th lamp. I would put an observer here, an observer here. And let's say I also want to display the 2nd lamp and the 4th lamp as a separate pattern. I do that. Now to select which pattern you want, you just press the note block associated with it, which shifts the floor, activates the observers you put in, and sends that pattern to the display. You can clear it with this note block, and let's say I wanted this pattern instead. Now we get 2 and 4. So if we make 13 of these layers, one for every number a tile can display, and we stack it so that it covers a larger area, we can use it for a flat version of our 2048 tile. I'll be back when I've made a prototype flat tile. Okay, after I don't even want to say how long, I finally have a working flat tile. It takes a signal strength input right here, just like the other one did, but this time it's on the bottom. That signal strength gets decoded by this blue circuit into a 4-bit binary number right here, and that 4-bit binary number gets sent up into this red decoder. Let me speed up the game real quick so I can show you it. If we put in a 3 and we press this button, we get the 3rd layer, which is 8, or 2 to the 3rd. If we put in a 9 and press the button, we get 2 to the 9th, 512. These are all the 13 layers I loaded, everything from 2 to 8192, and whenever we select a certain layer, that layer just shifts and sends its signal up through the observers, just like in the example. Alright, this is awesome. Our flat tile is completely done. Let's copy this and make it into a 4x4 board so we can see what the game's gonna look like. And there we go. There's our 4x4 board. By the way, I got this Fulbright mod. Absolute game changer. I needed this. Let's recap what we have so far. We have a 4x4 grid of tiles, and we can put any number on any tile we want by putting in a certain signal strength into it, and we have a way to compress and merge those signal strengths in all 4 directions. The next component we need is the one that generates new tiles. First, let's design a way to pick a random spot on the board, and once we do that, then we'll worry about making it a 90% chance of being a 2 and 10% chance of 4. When I coded this in Python, my random generation was done pretty stupidly. It basically picked a random spot on the board, and if it's full, pick another random spot. If that's full, pick again and again and again until you find an empty one. A better way to do it would be to make a list of all the empty spots first, and then you can choose a random spot out of that list. But in Minecraft, I don't really like either of those methods. They both seem hard. I have a different idea that I think is more suited for redstone. The idea is to look at the rows first and see if there are any that have at least one empty spot, and we'll call those the open rows. Then choose a random open row. On this random open row, we now choose a random empty spot, and that's the random spot that it chooses. So let's say that these 4 input lamps are which rows are open rows. For example, example, if I flip on this lamp and this lamp, that means that row 2 and row 4 have at least one empty spot. What we want to be able to do is press a button and have an output that selects one random row out of the ones that are turned on. For example, if I press the button right now, the output would have a 50% chance of looking like this and a 50% chance of looking like this. It just chooses one of the random open lamps. Or for example, if this is the only open row, when we press this button, we must get this as an output because that's the only row it could choose. Okay, I've been trying to build something that does this for like 2 hours and it's honestly really annoying. Maybe I'm just not seeing something, but to me it seems like the reason it's so hard is because you have a variable number of things that you need to choose from. You might need to choose from 2 things, or you might need to choose from 3 things, or even all 4, and on top of that, they're in random spots, and you have to remember which spot they're in to give a correct output. I'll be back when I get something promising. Okay, I found something cool that I think can help us. Someone commented about this on Flappy Bird, and I just forgot about it. It's a Shulker Box signal strength randomizer. You can load it with whatever signal strengths you want. For example, I'll put in 1, 2, 3, 4. When you press this button, a random Shulker Box gets dispensed, but they all read a different signal strength, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So basically, when you press this button, you get a random signal strength value right here, 1, 2, 3, or 4. And this is exactly what we need, because imagine the 2nd and 4th row are open, for example. All you need to do is put 2 and 4 into here, and boom, you're gonna get a random output 2 or 4. Okay, thanks to a bunch of Shulker Box randomizers and a decoder, we now have the circuit we want. You can enter any combination of open rows here, and when you press this button, it will choose a random one from the list of available open rows. So when I press this button, it's either going to be this lamp or this lamp on the output. It's 50-50 chance. If I do all 4, it'll pick a random one out of the 4. Or if I pick just one, it obviously has to pick that one. And what's really cool about this circuit is we can use it for 2 different purposes. We can use it once to choose a random open row, and then once we've chosen a random open row, we can plug its empty spots back into this machine and choose a random empty spot. Because both of those mechanics do the same thing. They take a random 4-bit number and they choose a random spot that has a lamp on. At this point, all of the major components are built. Now it's time for the daunting task of assembly. We need to create a layout that fits all of the components together in a nice way, and we need to think about how we want the game to function within that layout. Okay, I think this is the layout I'm going to go with. In the middle, with the pink, we have 16 signal strength memory cells. These cells are going to represent what's on the board at all times, and they should always be one-to-one with what's on the screen, which means that we're going to have to connect each one to its individual tile. Now let's say the player chooses to move up. When they press up, the entire board will be sent into the upwards compress merge circuit thing, which compresses all the tiles up and also merges them with that button down there. After it's done and ready to be returned, it comes back and gets fed back into main memory. Then we choose a random spot with this circuit, generate a new tile, and put it into that spot from below. And with that, we've completed a move. If the player wants to move to the right, it's extremely similar. The board gets sent to these circuits this time, which compresses and merges to the right. When it's done, it brings the board back, and then we generate a new tile. I'm honestly pretty happy with this layout. I think it'll work well. I'll be back when I got some progress on it. Alright, I made some progress, and I moved away from under the board because I was getting a little bit cluttered. I know this is a lot to look at right now, but let me just break it down. The first thing I made is this red circuit. When I press this button, the red circuit takes all the signal strengths that are on here and loads them into the memory cells. For example, if I have a 1 here and a 2 here, when I press this button, the 1 gets loaded into here, and the 2 gets loaded into here. So we're going to use the red circuit to kind of refresh the board when these guys send their stuff back. This blue circuit is pretty simple. It just takes whatever's in the memory cell and it repeats it downwards with a spiral. The reason I made the spiral is so that the orange lines can then grab the information off of that spiral in 4 different planes for 4 different directions. At the highest level plane, you can see we have 4 orange lines, and they're all grabbing information off of the blue spiral, and they're ready to send it in this direction. When you go down 1 level, there's another set of 4 orange lines which are also grabbing the same information off of the blue, but this time they're sending it this way. If you go down another plane, you have another set of orange lines that point that way, and finally on the bottom plane you have another set of 4 orange lines which point that way. So basically
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 16, 17, 18, 19. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Okay. Three. 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 5. Min. 5. 6. 7. 8. 9. 10. 11. 12. 13. 14. 15.
which is about half an hour from now.
Okay. No.
Basically, the orange lines are what allows us to take the board and send it into any other direction. And these purple lines are what allows us to choose which direction we want to send the board. As you can see here, the purple signal is the only thing that's stopping the blue from being repeated onto the orange lines. So based on which purple lines we unpower, we can choose which direction the board gets sent. Now we have a way to send the board to any compressor we want, and then we can also merge it while it's there by pressing that button. The next thing we need is a way to send the board back to main memory after it's done. Alright, I think I made a pretty nice system to do that, and I'll break it down again. Alright, here's the purple memory cells, same thing as before, and the first thing to note is these green spirals. These green spirals are really similar to the blue spirals, except this time they're on top. So for example, if you put a 1 signal strength onto the green spiral, it gets transferred all the way down and it's ready to be put into the memory cell. Back at the compressor, we now have this yellow circuit on top of it. These yellow circuits are basically just the return circuits. When you power this, it takes whatever's in the compressor and sends it into this return line. The return line flows up this blue and goes all the way up here, back into the green spirals. And all 4 sides are the same. They all do the same thing. Okay, now we have a way to send the board in any direction, compress it and merge it, and then send it back. Now let's implement random tile generation. Alright, I made some progress and random generation should be pretty close to done now. You can see we have 2 copies of that random picker circuit that I made earlier. The first one is for choosing an open row. So these blue lines are detecting which rows are open rows and they're being fed into the input. Based on which open row we choose right here, that open row's empty spot contents will then flood onto these pink lines. And these pink lines get sent into the second randomizer, which picks that empty spot on the row. So our open row is right here, our empty spot is over there. All we have to do is use that information to generate a new tile at that spot. Okay, random tile generation is done. This circuit right here is what's gonna pick whether it's a 2 or a 4. We just have another shulker box randomizer, which is filled with mostly 2s and then 1 4. So the chance of getting a 4 is actually going to be 1 in 9 because there's 9 spots here instead of 1 in 10 like the actual game, but I'm not worried about it. This is simple, so I'm just going to go with it. The dark green circuit takes that 2 or 4 and it distributes it to every single cell on the board. Then, based on which open row we have, which are these orange lines, and which empty spot we have, which are these orange lines, the only tile that has both an open row and an open spot is the one that's allowed through. And then you just have this blue circuit which allows you to choose when you want it to be allowed through, because you want to be able to control when the tile gets generated. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring these memory cells out, which is going to be quite a challenge with all this wiring, but remember, these are what the actual game is, so they need to be wired out of here and into the displays above us. Okay, that was way harder than I thought it was going to be, but I finally got the main memory to bus all the way out through this mess and up to the surface. So now this is our board. Now that we have our game, our board, and all of its functions, it's time to make the control logic. Whenever I make control logic, the first thing I do is I just list out all of the functions. We have the purple lines, which sends the board to the corresponding compressors. We have 4 different mergers, and we have 4 different returns. And then as far as generation goes, we have choose open row, choose an open spot on that row, generate the tile type, and allow the new tile into that empty spot. So based on those functions, I think this is probably a good way to wire the control logic. These are the 4 buttons that the player can use: move left, move right, move up, and move down. As an example, when the player presses move left, these 3 things happen: send to the left compressor, merge left, and return. Similarly, if they press move right, these 3 things happen: send to the right compressor, merge right, and return. But when we press any of these buttons, you can see that there's another line down here which always gets turned on no matter what. And that line is connected to the generation of a new tile, because no matter which way they want to move, you always want to generate a new tile afterwards. So let's get to work. Alright, I have a very rough version of movement working. It's just those 3 functions right now: the send, merge, and return. Let's try it out. So I loaded up 1, 1, 2, 2 into the board, and okay, it didn't work, but it kind of worked. I mean, it merged them, but I think the timing on the return journey is a little bit off. Alright, I adjusted the timings. Let's try it one more time. We want a 2 here and a 3 here. Come on, give it to me. Yes, dude! Yes! Oh my god, that is awesome. Alright, we basically just did our first 2048 movement. I'm not sure it's 100% working yet because it only passed one specific case, but I'm gonna give it a bunch of other edge cases and see if it has any other bugs. Okay, after literally hours of adjusting timings and fixing stupid bugs, I think it's finally 100% working. I put some lamps on it and I put in a couple starter 2s, and let's try it out. So move right, up. Why didn't they merge? Come on. Yeah, I I don't think this circuit is gonna work the way I want it to. Dude, I hate redstone sometimes, I swear to God. Okay, let's try that again. Yes, okay, they merged into a 4. Very nice. Okay, it looks like movement is fully working with these buttons, but I didn't hook up the control logic for generating a 2 yet, so let me do that real quick. Okay, everything should be completely hooked up and working. Look at that, we've got moving in all 4 directions, and it's generating a random 2 every time as well. Oh my gosh, that is amazing. We are so close to being done. All we have left to do is hook up these signal strengths to the display. And here she is, the finished 2048 game. Let's try it out. So let's do up. The 4s should merge into an 8, the 2s merge into a 4, and we get a brand new 2 right here. Oh my god, this is actually awesome. Okay, I thought I was done, but there's actually a couple problems. The first problem is that we actually don't want to just always generate a random tile. We actually only want to generate a random tile when the board changes. And that's not me, that's just how the rules work. I kind of just forgot about it. So for example, right now, if I press down, I should not get a new tile because the board doesn't move and there's no merges. But as you can see, I didn't think of that. So I'm going to put in another circuit that checks to see if the board actually changes. And if the board changes, then we generate a new tile. Okay, should be all set now. Let's try it out. So now when we press down, we want nothing to happen. We don't want a new tile. Okay. Cool. The second problem is with these displays. I mean, they're really cool, don't get me wrong, but they're pretty laggy. They've got a lot of observer clocks, and they don't update the lamps properly from far away. For example, if I move up right now, it doesn't actually show it. Like, see how it doesn't update properly? I don't really know what's going on there. I think it could be something to do with the fact that the display is mostly observers. I mean, I could be wrong. I don't know much about the technical lighting updates of the game, but let's just make a display that uses torches anyways. Okay, I've been playing around for a few hours, as you can see, and I finally got a nice torch display. And it's not just better for lag, it's better in every way. It doesn't use pistons, it doesn't use observers, it's completely combinational, and it takes a signal strength input down here, and it doesn't even have a 4-bit decoder on it. It doesn't need one. I mean, it doesn't get any better than this. I don't know why I didn't try to make this at the start. Let's swap out the old displays with the new displays. Alright, I hooked up all the displays and I made a little bit of a cleaner user input. Kind of looks like a controller. The game runs way faster now and you can see all the lamps no matter how far away they are. I mean, this is awesome. And with that, I would say we are done. I'll see you in the showcase. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe, and if you really enjoyed, show it to a friend. I hope you learned something, I hope you enjoyed. Peace out, guys.
Since the release of Super Mario Maker, the community found many crazy ways to build levels. We found ways to activate pipes once Mario takes damage. We found ways to forbid Mario to jump, to run, or to slow down. We found ways to build binary storage and build turn-based combat systems. We took a look at how all of this stuff works previously on this channel. But there is one super weird, incredibly powerful, and unimaginably complicated Mario Maker technique we never discussed in detail before. Namely, the giant gap and POW block memory. So with Mario Maker 2 around the corner, it's time for us to tie up some loose ends and to finally take a look at what are probably the most complex and weirdest techniques currently possible in Super Mario Maker. So you ready? Let's do this! Okay, so first things first, the giant gap. So check this out. Mario finds himself in the middle of a solid brick block labyrinth. Everything is fine. All that our plumber has to do here is to make his way through the confusing, totally not in danger of collapsing labyrinth while avoiding to touch the dangerous ouching saw blades that happen to live here too. business as usual. After a while, Mario even finds a checkpoint. But this checkpoint is no ordinary checkpoint, but actually an evil troll checkpoint. Because if Mario decides to run into this evil fake checkpoint, then the floor transforms into shiny yet deadly coins. Because of course it does. That's one way to use the giant gap. Before we discuss what this mysterious and presumably gigantic gap looks like, let's first take a look at another use case for it. Here Mario finds himself in a long dark corridor that leads our plumber to a small mini challenge. As soon as he enters this room, he becomes entrapped and is forced to hit 3 question blocks at the top in order to be able to leave again. At first this may not sound like an out of the ordinary challenge for a heroic plumber. I mean, surviving such situations is what he does for a living. This and plumbing. But actually Mario has to make a really interesting choice here. See, there is a mushroom on tracks to the right. Usually eating each and every yum yum mushroom is the way to go. But actually not today. Because this mushroom is linked to a dangerous contraption. As soon as Mario takes a bite off of the delicious mushroom, 2 piranha plants get shot into the arena, which makes hitting the 3 question blocks significantly harder. So here Mario has to decide whether he wants to overcome this challenge small, or if he likes to be able to take an additional hit, but has to survive a much more difficult challenge as a trade-off. Hooray! So how did this stuff work? Well, that is actually surprisingly simple. We basically have a small, globally loaded contraption that activates a power block or a P-switch as soon as the game lags. The game lags whenever Mario takes damage, eats a delicious power-up or activates a checkpoint. And the way we're able to test for this is by using the giant gap. What basically happens is this. We have a bullet blaster on top of a power block on top of a power block on tracks. Since all items on tracks are globally loaded, this contraption never unloads. But as soon as the game lags, something interesting happens. As soon as the game lags, a gap appears. This gap here. Namely a giant gap. So the reason I'm calling this 5 pixel gap a giant gap isn't because it is so gigantic, but because Mario Maker user Giant or Helgefan was, at least to my knowledge, the first one to put this really strange quirk to insanely good use. So as soon as the game lags, the power block on top of the power block on tracks suddenly is no longer on top of the power blocks, but floats a couple of pixels above it. It is suddenly in the air and no longer has contact to the power block at the bottom. If the current camera was more than 4 blocks away, this would mean that the power block and the blaster above it are no longer on global ground, since they're in the air, and because of this, the blaster would despawn once the game lags. That's how the 2 contraptions worked. If the game lags, this power block and bullet blaster disappear, which means that this power block gets triggered. But that's enough theory. Let's do a quick Mario Maker experiment. Okay, so I just claimed that power blocks become airborne for a moment when the game lags, as long as they're on top of a moving entity on tracks. The problem is, there is no way to visualize that, because the previous contraptions only did something when outside of the current camera border, since it uses the fact that items despawn as soon as they leave global ground when off-screen. We can't see bullet blasters off-screen. But luckily for us, there is an easy way to visualize this nonetheless. If our thesis of momentarily power block airborneness is correct, that would mean that a power block has to interact with a spring as soon as a giant gap appears. Because power blocks in the air interact with springs, power blocks on the ground don't interact with springs. Simple. So let's test this. Here we have a setup where power blocks are on the ground, but should for a moment be in the air once the game lags. The powers happily travel up and down and don't trigger the springs, but once we eat a mushroom and lag the game, hooray! The power blocks are in the air and therefore bounce off of the spring. We just proved our thesis. Isn't science fun? So here we have our first principle of power block airborneness. If the game lags while the power block on tracks moves downwards, the power block becomes airborne for a frame. Awesome. Let's try to put this knowledge to good use. Here our plumber finds himself in a small hallway. All that our heroic Princess Saver has to do here is to make his way safely through a couple of dangerous fireballs that try to burn him. Simple stuff. But once the fireball hallway lies behind him, stuff becomes more interesting. The famous level-ending X is sadly blocked by a nasty bullet blaster, and there is nothing in this room that could allow our Mario to get rid of the blaster. Nothing but this mushroom. So eating this mushroom has interesting consequences, because the second Mario eats this shroom, a P-switch timer starts, 2 bullet bills drop from the ceiling and tons of evil fire-spitting plants enter the arena. how horrible now our plumber is forced to avoid all the hot and dangerous burning balls that are flying towards him until the P-switch expires. Because once the P-switch expires, the bullet blaster dies and the path towards the goal finally opens up. Hooray! Okay, so how did we wire all this stuff to this mushroom? Well, we made simple use of the first principle of power block airborneness. It's super simple actually. Out of sight are just a couple of contraptions that activate a spring as soon as they detect lag. This is how we shoot the bullet bills down, this little contraption is how we trigger the P-switch, and this is how we get the piranha plants to suddenly drop down. Super simple stuff. So at the beginning of the video, I claimed that this stuff is among the most complex stuff currently known in Mario Maker. But so far, everything has been quite simple. So why did I make this horrendous claim? Well, because stuff is a bit more complicated. Let's do another experiment to show what I mean. Okay, so here we have the same setup we just used to our right and a very similar setup to the left. The only difference here is that the power blocks once fall onto the moving item from above and once they jump onto it from below, ninja style. So what happens here once the game lags? Well, our first principle of power block airborneness tells us what will happen. All 4 power blocks become airborne, hit the spring and bounce away, right? Well, let's test it. That's strange. Only the powers that fell onto the moving item from above are bounced away. The ones that jumped onto the power blocks ninja style aren't affected. Looks like we have a mistake in our thesis. Hooray! Isn't science fascinating? So here's the second principle of power block airborneness. Apparently the first principle is wrong because of spawn order power block memory. So what is power block memory? See, all power blocks are power blocks, but no 2 power blocks are the same. Each power block has the information of when it spawned stored inside it. It remembers its spawning order. And weirdly enough, we're able to actually access this information. And this is where this stuff becomes ridiculously complicated. Okay, so if we want to understand why only the power blocks that drop down from above are able to create a giant gap, then we need to discuss spawn order and stack behavior of items. So check this out. Here we once again have 2 very similar setups. We have 2 power block towers that get picked up by a blue platform as soon as we activate it. The only difference here is that one tower is already put together in the editor while the other tower drops down from above. So in theory, we have the exact same tower twice here. And common sense would tell us that both power towers behave in the exact same way as soon as they get picked up. But surprisingly, that's not what happens. Let's take a look. The tower to the right is a perfectly straight and beautiful power block tower. But the tower to the left is equally beautiful, but behaves out of the norm. The power blocks wiggle around. So that's the first difference between the 2 towers. But if we look closely, we can actually see another difference. Only the power blocks to the left create a giant gap while moving down, while no giant gap appears in the tower to the right. Weird, isn't it? If we want to understand why this happens, we have to take a super close look into the order in which the game spawns entities. But since all of this stuff is incredibly dry, let's first take a look at a random Mario joke I just googled. So, why doesn't Mario need his own movie? Well, because he already is a blockbuster. So back to our spawn order studies. So when a screen gets loaded, like when we leave a door, then the game loads the entities on screen from the bottom to the top first, and second from the left to the right, meaning items that are placed lower get always loaded before items that are placed higher. And if 2 items are on the same vertical layer, then the item on the left always gets loaded first. The reason why this is important is because items remember the information in which order they spawned, and the physics calculation of Mario Maker is based on the spawn order of the entities. This is the reason why the 2 towers behave differently. The tower on the left is ordered in a way that the power block at the bottom spawned first and the one at the top spawned last, while the other tower is ordered in the exact opposite way. This is the reason why they behave differently when on tracks. If we simplify this a bit, the reason why one tower wiggles while the other one is static is because the collision of each power block against each power block is once calculated from the bottom to the top, while the other tower calculates it in the reverse order. This gives us an incredibly powerful way to store information in Mario Maker. The order in which the POW blocks spawn is information that we can write, manipulate and read. But before we take a look at how to actually read this information, let's Google another Mario joke. So, why did the Chain Chomp tweet out the blog post? Well, because it was attached to this post. Anyway, so how to read stack ordered information? Well, we have two options. We can either use the wiggling or we can use the giant gap. Let's take a look at the wiggling first. Here we once again have a similar setup as before. Both setups are identical, but the left tower is ordered spawn order bottom to top, while the other one is ordered from the top to the bottom. So watch out for what happens with this block and with the Koopa at the top when we activate the platforms. The tower with the first spawn at the bottom doesn't hit the Koopa, but lands on top of the block. The tower with the first spawn at the top, however, doesn't land on the block, but kills the innocent Koopa. Hooray! We are reading the information how the POW blocks are sorted by killing or sparing Koopas. Next, let's read the information by using a giant gap. So here we have the following setup. We have two POW blocks in the middle. When activated, those POWs get carried into this spot where Skeleton Roller Coaster picks them up as soon as Mario triggers it. The POWs are then first carried upwards, where they pick up their buddy, the Muncher, and afterwards they travel so far to the left